Hey guys, how's it going? Today I wanted to talk a bit about DPDR, but before that, welcome. If you guys are new here, please hit the subscribe button down below and leave me a comment letting me know what you thought of today's video. So, in my experience as somebody with gender dysphoria and a Catholic, Catholics often aren't the most charitable, or at least not as charitable as we should be, to people with gender dysphoria or trans people. Now, I don't think that this is because Catholics are not trying. I think it is because Catholics don't really understand what dysphoria is or what it's like. When I was first realizing what it was that I experienced and what I was feeling, and that it was gender dysphoria, I did research. I looked into it. I went to my normal podcasts or read articles online, things like that. And what I found was generally you'd get something along the lines of somebody would call into the show and say something like, hey, X relationship to me, whether it's, niece, nephew, child, best friend, whatever it was, some close relationship, just came out as transgender. And I know as a Catholic that we don't really believe in that, and that we're not supposed to think that believe that they're actually a different gender. So like, how am I supposed to interact with this person? Their relationship's really important to me. What do I do? And the response is something along the lines of, well, these people don't like something about who they are. Or they have this desire for this desire for things that aren't their gender. And, they're being delusional, thinking that they're not really the gender that they are. But you should try and have a good relationship with them, stay close to them, but remember that they're not really what they say they are. The problem with this, while not necessarily wrong, is it doesn't really address the actual experience that trans people are having and people with gender dysphoria have. And it's not really connecting the persons together. It's not really helping that relationship at all. My experience as somebody with dysphoria, learning I had dysphoria and trying to find these resources and finding resources like that, is what I found is I'm kind of being told, okay, you're just delusional. Just try and get over your delusion. But that's not what dysphoria looks like. That's not how dysphoria works. There is this idea, it seems, that people have due to cultural images and politics and whatever else, that dysphoria or being transgender is a choice. Now, I will say, in my personal beliefs, being transgender is more of a choice, but having dysphoria is not. Now, I think what people who are transgender would say is more along the lines of, if you have dysphoria, you are trans, but the way you live your life is up to you. You don't have to fully transition or something like that. That's not the point I'm trying to get into. The point being, though, that the way we feel, it is not a choice. It's not just a desire, right, for men with gender dysphoria. It's not just like a desire to be more effeminate or to be a woman. It's not that simple. There are many different ways, frankly, that dysphoria can manifest, many different symptoms that it can have. But the two big ones that I wanted to talk about today that I mentioned before are what's called DPDR. Now, these stand for Depersonalization and Derealization. These are symptoms that most people in our lives will experience at some point or another. But they're two symptoms that dysphoria can cause in excess. There is also a diagnosis that is called DPDR. That is these two symptoms just in their own right. You don't have to have dysphoria to have these symptoms, but these are two major symptoms of dysphoria. So what are they? What is DPDR? Depersonalization and derealization are both kinds of dissociation. Another big word. If you've been to therapy, if you have anybody with mental health issues in your family or anything like that, you've probably heard this term before, dissociation. What it is is a kind of psychological mechanism that we have where we separate ourselves from something that we're having a difficult time processing. If we're in a particularly traumatic situation, one of the options the brain might do is say, I'm going to separate myself from whatever's going on, from this traumatic thing. Depersonalization and derealization are two big ways that dissociation occurs or can happen. Derealization is something happens and our brain says, that's not real. If you've ever had an experience where like everything kind of feels like you're in a dream and just kind of not totally there, not kind of with it, or it feels like it's a fantasy or like you're watching it in a movie or something like that, it's not real, that is a kind of dissociation. That's derealization, where your brain, rather than directly addressing the full situation going on, separates you by saying it's not as real as we think. Depersonalization, on the other hand, is where when something happens to us, or if we're in a situation that is potentially traumatic or hard for us to process, what our brain does is instead of saying, perhaps, well, this isn't really real, what our brain will say is, well, this isn't really happening to me. So you take your own person out of the situation. It's depersonalization. So something extreme might happen and we might think of it as, oh, well, that happened to somebody else. I might have this memory in my head, but it's like I'm watching it happen to somebody else, not actually to me. It's a way I'm stepping back and separating slightly from what's really going on. So that's a brief overview of what depersonalization and derealization are. Both of these things are very common symptoms in gender dysphoria or caused by gender dysphoria. And what it leads to is the sentiment of, I'm not living my life. I'm not the one living my life. Either a situation that I'm having or an experience I'm going through isn't happening to me, it's happening to somebody else, or just not to me, or it's not really happening at all. It's just a fantasy or something separate that I can separate myself from. But what it ends up meaning is that I am being separated from my own life. I'm no longer living my own life. And this can have drastic consequences on all sorts of our parts of our life. Some of the more direct Catholic things that it could consequence that I have personally felt is like, if I'm praying, I don't necessarily feel connected to my prayer. Now, that's a more minor thing. This can have even bigger relationship issues or general issues in our life. It could have issues with work. Like, it can manifest in so many different ways and it causes so many different problems. Imagine trying to get into a close relationship with somebody, but you don't feel like you're actually living your life. You don't feel like I'm not actually in a relationship with that person. I'm not having a relationship with them, or this relationship isn't a real relationship. These become major breakdowns. So when you're trying to live your life this way, it begins to rip things so far apart and become so unbearable. And this is where those treatments, that way of thinking about it that many Catholics have of, oh, they're just in delusion, or they're just desiring something that they probably shouldn't be desiring, don't really hold up. It's so difficult to approach people with dysphoria or trans people because, as Catholics, as just delusional, because that's not really the core of the problem. That's not how we need to be relating to these people. That's not the problem that needs to be related to. So you might get somebody, myself included, who has gone through a situation like this, struggling with this particular mental issue for so long, with seemingly no way to get through it, that when when we're presented with some option that we're told, this will help you feel better, this will help you through this will make you happier, this will put you as a member in your life, as a participant in your own life, that is what those persons are after. If you had that experience of somebody close to you saying, hey, I'm trans now, that's what they're after. What they're after is to be a participant in their own life, to be able to relieve the pain that they've had. So when you come to address these people as Catholics, as a Catholic, try not to be addressing it or not thinking about it as I'm coming to somebody who's delusional, or as somebody who just wants something that they can't have. Try and recognize that they just want to be a part of their own life, and their suffering has separated them from their own lives. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, please hit the like button. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, rebuttals, whatever it is, please stick it in the comments. I try to read every single comment, and I try to respond to every single comment. And if you want to see more videos like this in your feed, please do hit that subscribe button. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload, or I'll at least show up in your feed. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless.